Well, good evening, folks. My name is Kim Morrison. I'm the author of A Few Heart Droppings. It is a book with many writings I've done over the course of my life. Many of it, quite a few pieces of poetry is into it. I got a few articles into it. There's also a play into it. So it's not just a poetry book, although that's where you'll find it on Amazon. I want to talk a little bit about the work into it. All the work is connected to people that inspired me during my life. So some of the themes are a little, I guess you could say, depressing at the same time, but you got to realize that almost everything you read in there is connected to a person or persons. For example, my award-winning poem, the one I won the award through the college for, is called Dear Rosebud, and it's written like a letter. And that was inspired by the students on my middle school students on my bus when I drove a school bus, and also my granddaughter. I found that many things I've done inspired me. Rarely is it only just one individual that inspired a piece, but there are some in there, and I can name one. The Rising Star was inspired by one exceptional middle school girl at the time, and I gave her a copy of it. She knows that. And I have several other ones like that. I can't name everything, but Outward Bound was one that I took notes for on a bar napkin. It was inspired the time when my son was a baby. It was inspired by my son, at that time a baby. The list goes on. I have a lot of them where they're inspired by more than one person. I like the one on domestic violence. It's called the woman in the window. It was inspired by two women that I knew during my childhood. What makes my work probably a little bit different than the other one is, as teachers have said, and people, even one English teacher had asked me one time. I said, "How did you get such a command of the English language?" And I said, "Well, I got in trouble a little bit in school occasionally, so my two best friends were Webster's Dictionary and Roget's Thesaurus, so those were the books they gave me to read. You get quite good at knowing your synonyms and your words. And when I write a piece of poem, I'm really, since I don't write in meter very often, I can do it, but I just don't like it. This is where I agree with poet Robert Frost. He said something along the lines that the English language breaks in every direction with every attempt to command it. So it's easier to do a type of free verse, something along that lines. So my focus was always on a word choice, and sometimes I've been called on my choices. For example, in Love's Journey, which was another award-winning poem, I used the word vitriol. Well, my use of it has nothing to do with hatred or being caustic. My use of it relates more to the synonym, which means storm. So it was just a way of using a different language. My goal was always to use unique, or put together unique language in a way that no one else could ever possibly think of putting it together that way. And I achieved that with several poems. But the goal, and I hope people that read this though find it entertaining, and I know most will understand the themes, if not every word I used. And that's what the whole thing is about. I think I've always felt that poetry, sometimes they quest too much toward the art, that they lose the meaning. People don't read it because they don't understand it. And that's sad, because it's a good genre. It's a wonderful genre. it's the English language at its best when it's done right. And I kind of hope that with my book, maybe people will maybe read a few more poems. And I have got my recognition. I mean, I won 2 national awards, as I said, and I was published by my college twice and won the State Communications Award. And I've been published twice. I picked from authors from around the world, by Poetry Soup, to have poems in their anthologies they put out. But a few heart droppings was something I've always wanted to do. So I did my own book. I put together my own book with what I thought was some of the best that I've written. I also have 2 bus driver poems in there. I have a bus driver site named after unsung heroes of the Pre-Dawn Light, I think is the name of the poem, and that's my bus driver site as well. But those 2, and there's another one, The One You Never Thought Cared, I think is in there too, and that's a bus driver poem too. This is why I often referred to myself. Actually, I didn't refer to myself at first. A student did. They called me the bus driver poet. One of them did years and years ago. So I kind of used that when I put my press release together, because it is a lot of the stuff in there was inspired by students in some way. I have one called From Little Pink Bows to Baby Bassinets, which is an article. I wrote that for one student that got pregnant when she was 15. She was a middle school student, I think in the 8th grade. Around that time she was 15. And that was inspired by a single person too. I also have another one in there that's been inspired by kids in general, and is when I was at the end of they were going to get ready to take me off that run for the following year because they didn't have enough census of students. So I wrote everything because I knew all these kids were graduating. A piece called "Listen Up, Kid" that was published in the St. Pete Times. I was really pleased at that time that it was, because I wanted that one to be read. And I gave it. I do remember that I had copies printed up and gave them all to the students that were graduating that year. So a lot of things in my book, like I said, things that I wrote have a real life backstory, and that's important because you may not know what it is, but I can give you information on it if you email me most of them. Another one too, inspired by 2 students that were in love. It's a little bit abstract, but it's nothing bad. It's just interesting. It's an interesting read. It's called "Unknowing Hearts." And I can just rattle off all of them. I had girls that I was in another job where I took non-emergency medical patients to different offices, medical offices, and one of them was a drug rehab. And "A Forever Kind of Love" that's in my poem. It's a really hot, sexy poem. I mean, it'll excite yourself reading that one. It is because of these women, especially the ones the women that get caught with drug abuse. They can't seem to escape, and they don't feel like they're worth anything. And that was the whole point of that. That had a basis, but it was inspired more by one person than all the people I carried. But there's a little of it, a little inspiration taken from somebody else. The other one doesn't know. Only one knows who inspired the bulk of it, but it's taken from somebody else in another run I did to another drug place in Newport Richey when I was usually going to the Spring Hill one. But that one was inspired by that. So all these pieces have a connection, a human connection usually, or have something that directly inspired it. I was sitting on a beach when I began to take notes for what I call natural seduction, and actually it was a little piece when I used the swaying of the palm tree, and that's how that idea came about. But when you read these things, I just want to keep in mind that I put a lot of effort in what I wrote, and and sometimes I have at least two, maybe three poems in there that took me a month to write, and I just were frustrating because I am so fussy when I pick for word choice. And Dear Rosebud, I probably was and agonized over that one because I wanted it to be perfect because I wanted to be a certain way, and every word was just carefully selected. However, I've had hard times when I even went up on the internet to look for words that were better than any I could come up with. I'll give you an example. The poem I just mentioned, Forever Kind of Love, I was talking about on one part of that poem, going down on a woman, but I had to describe her feminine parts, vagina, and I couldn't find any word that didn't demean her, that demean women. And that's exactly what I didn't want. So I had a very tough time, challenging time to find a word in a way where it wouldn't be demeaning. It would be, because the whole point of the poem is to lift the woman up, not to degrade her. So that was one that was a particular challenge. Some parts might be a little confusing because I go to the abstract on that too, but it's a good piece. I have a lot of good pieces in there. Remember My Love was one I wrote for my aunt when my uncle died. There's many. I can think of many times when they were, but like I said, I was not one to write in meter, and this puzzles some people because I can't do it. I just prefer not to. I prefer to stay focused on word choice. I always said I might not make such a good teacher because if any student that I had ever used nice in a poem or a word that weak in a poem, I'd probably hit him with a dictionary because at least hand them the dictionary. But because you with poetry, you pull the best language. You look for the unusual. Sometimes you use words in a way that they're not usually used in that way because, for example, I was talking about the word vitriol in Forever Kind of Love, and that simply means storm the way I used it. But it also, its definition is caustic, hatred, anger. But that's not how I meant it when I used it. I just wanted to use something different. You'll see that in a lot of pieces. You'll recognize, say, well, he did something different here. I did. Even the language in the articles, you'll find that I put together lines in a particular way because I'm trying to get you to not only think, but feel. And to accomplish both, the language has to be right. I mean, you can think of a lot of great poets that wrote a lot of things, and like Keats, it was great, and I kind of lean toward Robert Frost because he didn't rhyme much of anything. I also kind of like Oscar Wilde. He was one that had a strange way of using language, sometimes an odd way. And I do appreciate, though, a good sonnet. I will still read Shakespeare, but I'm not going to write many of those. I don't know that. But I just put together a group of the best work that I did. I put in this book, and many of the book pieces have several of the pieces in there garnered awards for one reason or another, and two of them were from national contests. I have the awards on the wall, and I have the one from the college I'm quite proud of. It's from Central Florida College because it was kind of for the group, and that one I'm glad that one went my way. Also, I'm a member of the Poetry Soup. Much of my work is up there. Not all of it, but yeah, a good bit of it, but not all of it. I also have a blog, KimMorrisonblog.com. I think it's up there. But if anybody ever wanted a question, you can always email me. I'm willing to talk about my work. My email is kennycut@gmail.com. Easy to get a hold of. And I hope people like the book as much as I like putting it together, because I really was carefully selected the best pieces that I thought I did. I have some I don't think as much of as others, and like I said, most of the pieces that's selected in here, there's a connection, there's people behind it, there's a story, and a very important story behind it. And you won't necessarily see the story, but if you think about it, you know that what I wrote there on that page had to come from somewhere besides just my head, my heart. And I thank you for reading it. I thank you for buying the book and giving it a read. You will enjoy it, part of it. Yeah, some of the pieces will be kind of depressing, like the woman in the window. Like I told you, that one is a tough read. I haven't seen a woman yet that was abused that hasn't cried when they read that piece. And but it's an important piece, and I have a lot of important pieces that are near and dear to me. Dear Rosebud is near and dear to me, and I Love's Journey, because they got me a lot of attention for a while. Love's Journey got me some odd questions too, because there's a sex scene on the beach in that one. I remember one young girl one time when I was doing a publication event at the college asking me if I had ever had sex on the beach. Well, I forgot where I was when I was there, and I was signing autographs there. I said, well, yeah, but not now. Like at that time, I was like 56 years old. I said, nobody wants to see my hairy ass on the beach. I forgot where I was when I said that. But, I don't mind talking about them, talking about what I've written, and I appreciate even comments from people, so I hope people review the book too. The only problem I had with the book is a couple of my pieces barely fit an 8 by 10 sheet of paper. So when they made it down into the 6 by 9 format, the lines are a little different than how I actually had them. And that would be on the poem, I think, Love's Journey, and let me see. I think also Dear Rosebud has a line where it's just a little different than I had it when I wrote it. But all the rest should be okay. And I thank you for reading. I hope you do buy it. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.